All right, hello everyone. This is Danny Haiphong, and I am with you today to premiere a new feature of the Left Lens, which will be called the Internationalist Transmission. And in this series, what I'll be doing is I will be in conversation with prominent content creators, YouTubers, activists, journalists, folks that are on the front lines of the anti-imperialist struggle, whether it's here in the United States where I'm located or whether they're based abroad, in an attempt to bridge what I think is a huge gap right now in the movement here in the United States, as well as a huge gap that I think is just damaging the progress of the left movement overall. And there is a lack of solidarity. And I think it falls to the feet of the United States and people in the United States who are fighting to build it. So that's what the purpose of this program is. And I am very happy because today I have Luna Oy joining me, and I'll bring her on in just a second. And we will be talking about the significance of internationalism and Vietnam and the lessons that we can learn from present day Vietnam, the lessons we can learn throughout history. And I think it's important because, as you've all seen, there is a lot going on right now, especially in the United States. We almost have the system of imperialism devouring itself. We saw the Capitol, Hill insurrection or rebellion or racist so-called coup that some people are calling it. But we know that there is a deep crisis here in the United States reflected there in that white supremacy and empire and capitalism are all at the root. And that's not being discussed right now in the midst of the hysteria. You got people blaming Russia for this attack on Capitol Hill. You have so many issues with the discourse that's happening. And I hope that, this conversation today can put into context the fact that what happened on Capitol Hill is really a reflection, is really chickens coming home to roost on what the United States has been doing abroad for many centuries and what the United States has been doing here to indigenous people, to Black people, and to working people as a whole. So without further ado, I do not want to spend too much time because a lot of people are talking about Capitol Hill and what happened there. So I'm going to bring in Luna Oy now so we can get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the Internationalist Transmission. Hey, Luna.
Hi everybody, Luna. I'm so happy to be here. And actually, I heard about you the earlier, and from like one of my comrades, a Hawaiian comrade. He's a civil book, and then I've been wanting like looking for your Twitter account, and then finally you reached out to me. First, was like, "Whoa, it's so awesome!"
Right. Well, Luna, I've been following you for quite a while, especially I found you during the pandemic because
Oh,
as you've been talking a lot, Vietnam has had your video on that kind of went viral, how Vietnam handled the
oh,
pandemic.
okay.
And the United States has done such a disastrous job. I mean, this is just such a deep reflection of the rot of capitalism and imperialism and what in your work on Vietnam in the present day, a socialist country, which is for me very important to me because I have roots there. The only reason I'm here in the United States is because of the liberation movement that happened in
Mm.
Vietnam, right? So this is a very personal thing for me as well to be able to know you and get to meet you as a comrade. And so I am very happy that we're going to be having this conversation about something I think is so critical, and I know you cover in terms of internationalism and its relationship to your homeland and ultimately what is my homeland too.
Yeah, exactly. So actually about 2019 when I first started my channel, I mostly just wanted to focus about like traveling videos in Vietnam, and also teach you how to cook Vietnamese food from like authentic Vietnamese women like me, and mostly like fun stuff like that. And then like I started receiving like questions and like lies and propagandas about Vietnam. So like, God damn it, I have to talk about this. Like I can't just like close my eyes and seeing people like spreading fake news about us anymore. And like that's why I started focusing more about history and politics and stuff like that. And I'm so happy to see you. At first, I thought like I was wrong. At first, I thought like, damn, must be so many anti-communists in the USA right now, especially in the Viet Americans, like the community over there. And then like more and more, I met like more and more like comrades who are like Viet Americans. And I'm
Mm.
very, very actually happy to know.
That's beautiful. Yeah, no, I'm glad. I'm glad you are, and I'm glad you're here. So folks may be watching this. We have it on Black Agenda Reports Twitter account. So folks who are on Black Agenda Reports Twitter account are on my Facebook, where it's also streaming. Please do go over to YouTube. Go to the Left Lens on YouTube. Subscribe. Hit the bell. Make sure you get notifications about these kind of streams and these videos. So do that while you're here. But I want to get started. So, really, when I think about Vietnam, and you know, I think about in the United States, the last time the left was really relevant, the last time when the left had any sort of power and strength, was when a significant faction of it, especially as we at Black Agenda Report focus on the Black movement, the Black left movement,
Yeah,
was um, so deeply tied to what was going on to Vietnam for many different reasons. For one, Black people were the first to get sent to Vietnam, the first to
exactly.
die, and then they learned pretty quickly that the war was an imperialist war, and that the same racism that they were facing in the United States, that they were facing in the military, a lot of the times, discrimination on the job, um, the racism that was so endemic, the
Yeah,
violence. Then they would go to Vietnam and were asked to do that to Vietnamese people. They were asked to do that to the NLF and to kill them. And a lot of people, Muhammad Ali was the famous boxer who
exactly.
said, they never call
Heart
me
to
the N word.
Muhammad Ali.
But he represented something that was really big at the time, right? And Vietnam was a big part of this. So there were a lot of Black GIs who were defecting. There was an American Servicemen's Union that was organizing GIs to oppose the war. There was also organizations and individuals like the Black Panther Party who were literally offering troops, literally offering members of their organizations to fight on the side of the Vietnamese. And I know you've mentioned Huey Newton's letter on your Twitter and in your past work in 1969. I believe he wrote that.
Yep.
Um, but even before that, you had someone like Robert Williams who he had to defect. He had to leave the United States. He was a leader of the Monroe chapter of the NAACP. He defected to Cuba. He had to leave. He had to go into
Yeah.
exile because there was a setup saying that he kidnapped a white woman. It was an event that had been escalating. White vigilante terrorists and the police in North Carolina were targeting him and the FBI. He ran to Cuba after the revolution and then ended up in China. But in between then, he was actually broadcasting in Vietnam to Black GIs saying, "Hey, do not participate in this imperialist war. You need to either fight for the other side, or you need to stop what the military is doing." So there's all these connections that have gotten lost. One of my favorite things too, and I'll stop here, is you talk a lot about Ho Chi Minh, Luna, and maybe we
Mm,
can start here. Ho Chi Minh
mm.
was an internationalist, and he was an internationalist pretty early in his life. He was traveling everywhere,
Yeah,
including the United States, and wrote a famous
yeah,
essay on the Ku Klux Klan and on lynching
yeah,
in 1924, where he talks
exactly.
about Black people being lynched, and he goes into a very gritty and sometimes hard to read detail. I remember I was reading this in college in 2012, 13,
Mm,
and it was hard to read because he was making sure that whoever was reading this knew that, in the famous quote in the beginning of the essay, is that Black people are the most oppressed people in the
exactly.
human family, right? That's a
Mm,
paraphrase, but that's what he said. And then he laid it out why that was. And we know that he met Malcolm X during this time, but he
mm,
politically, I think that was an accident. But politically, he met with like Marcus Garvey and really connected to the Black nationalist movement. But anyway, I just want to jump off there to say Vietnam is really important for the movement in the United States, because since Vietnam and since a lot of the world struggle has been erased, I think, from the psyche of most Americans, especially on the left, we've
yep.
seen the movement also decline, and then we see things like hostilities towards actually, socialist countries, countries
Yeah.
that are under attack from imperialism, including Vietnam, which was under sanctions for a long time, not too long ago.
Yeah.
And we know that the United States is on a war footing now, and I think that we can see from the period where the Vietnam War ended till now in the United States, there's been a backward trend, and no one talks about Vietnam. So let's start here. Why is it important for US activists, leftists, Westerners in general? Why is it important to understand Vietnam in this international context, Luna? Could you help us out?
Yeah, first I am Marxist-Leninist, into leftist unity, the unity between like leftists, and then also internationalist. Means that like I've been for I don't know for decades they've been like spreading propaganda like socialism never worked, something like that. But like because and they never explain why they said like it never works because like, it always got crushed by capitalism. Like Vietnam tried to follow what we believed in, and then we got like bombed to Stone Age in the 60s. So that's how hard it is. And actually, Vietnam now is still one of the rare, very rare country that's still proud to call ourselves socialist and still like growing and beating capitalism in their own games, especially in this pandemic. Like we still like remains like to be the only one country in Southeast Asia and very rare country in the world that still have like a positive growth rate in economy. It's super rare, very rare, and then we still remain like good relationship with as many countries as possible. Not like really like the DPRK or Cuba and China is like a very complicated situation that I'm not gonna mention here. So okay, so yeah, like, I mean like, about internationalism, I believe that we all, especially leftists, we should like deprogram ourselves from propaganda and lies and distortion about socialist countries like Vietnam. That's the first very important thing, and then stop talking shit about us. I'm so tired of it, and also like giving support for us too. So like I'm also into left unity. So like I don't really want to label myself as a Marxist or anarchist because I'm into left unity. But like yeah, I would be happy, like comfortable if you call me Marxist because at least like I'm a well trained officer trained Marxist in like 16 years since I was 6 year old. It's kind of funny, huh? So yeah, and then that's why like I want Marxist Leninists and anarchists in the world to support Vietnam about on what we are doing and vice versa. I want also Vietnamese Comrades to support other revolutions in the world too. It's like it's time to end leftist infighting. I'm so tired of it. And so that's one of the most important. But like it doesn't mean like we can't criticize people, but we have to criticize them in good faith. We criticize them to help them to fix the mistake or the problem. It's not like you criticize them to feel like you're like superior, you're so smart, and they are not real leftists. You're the only one real leftist with smart ideas here.
Hmm.
It's not the thing that I want to, but yeah, supporting is very very important. So like I'm a Marxist, but I support in the anarchist movement in the USA in many aspects, especially like in the aspect like fighting against imperialism, capitalism over there, fascism, racism over there. I very very support them, and then I also support the Marxist-Leninist revolution like right in like the South American country. So yeah, something like that.
Yes, indeed. I think that what is really interesting right now, um, in the United States, and what I think is so harmful about, as you said, there's so much backlash towards socialist countries. And look, there will be a time where, as maybe me and you become more comradely, and maybe as, we develop more. I think the United States is so backward right now that we need to develop more, to be able to have conversations about the complicated issues like China and Vietnam, which is very complicated. And believe me, there are a lot of issues. I'm
Very
sure
cool.
there are a lot of people in the comments that probably want to see, some kind of debate or anything. I think that the overarching issue, because I live in the United States, and what is the United States doing towards China? It's saber rattling, and it's negatively impacting the whole region, which will include, Vietnam, because the United States wants to put everyone in its crosshairs, So, but the point for me is that there is, especially among the most militant of us, and this goes for those who are just coming into the movement too, who are journalists or activists, whoever you are, because you grew up in the United States, and because there has been this long lull since everything that I discussed in the beginning has kind
Mhm.
of become repressed and taken out of the sort of historical outlook and the materialist outlook of how most people think about things, like in countries like Vietnam, that it's almost like a knee-jerk reaction to hear Vietnam and say, because what the corporate media has said, because what Washington and its weird little foundations and all these think tanks that write all these articles about places like Vietnam, the knee-jerk reaction is, oh, Vietnam's undemocratic. Oh, Vietnam is this authoritarian state. Oh, Vietnam is run by a communist party and it like kills people in the streets and all this nonsense. But right now, we're going through here in the United States. First, we had the storming of the Capitol by these right-wing forces,
Yeah.
amid a pandemic and an economic crisis where
Yes.
there's no side of the US state right now which even pretends to be for working people and which even
Yeah. Right.
pretends to be for peace. So when you think about this idea of demonizing Vietnam, and some people say, oh, well, you can walk and chew gum too, and you can criticize Vietnam and criticize the United States. Well, its system has contained the pandemic, not just
Yes.
contained the pandemic, basically prevented any serious outbreak from happening
Yeah.
from the very beginning. And only a few countries can say they've done that. Um, and Vietnam is, I mean, first of all, it's a very young country in terms of being fully liberated. 1975 was
Exactly.
not that long ago.
Yeah.
And we
Our
know
last
that
embargo was lifted like 2006. Can you believe that? Early 2000, our
exactly,
last embargo got lifted. We had like 15, 16 years to really build our economy. It's not that even
exactly,
long.
exactly. So, Luna, I want to know your thoughts about what do you think, and if you could educate our audience about what people could learn from how Vietnam has developed since its liberation, right? Because right now, I think that there is so much hostilities towards there's 5 remaining countries in the world with communist parties that are in leadership, right? And there's different kinds of hostilities for all of them. And for Vietnam, oftentimes oh, it's authoritarian, but also, oh, it's capitalist, and oh,
Yeah.
it's not doing anything good, and it's just like a really poor country over there, and we don't have to pay attention to it. But why should you activists in the United States? Why should journalists? Why should people who are interested in peace really pay attention to what Vietnam is doing right now?
Okay. Again, as I mentioned earlier, there are a huge amount of lies, distortion, and misinformation about Vietnam, and like the purpose is to make you hate communism. The purpose is to like undermine countries like Vietnam and then to stop you from going to the left, something like that. So like looking at Vietnam, like but with like in like how it actually is very important because it opens your eyes a lot about what is the truth out there outside of the lies that you've been fed by the CIA linked NGOs and state funded like media outlet, something like that. It's very
Mm,
important that like it could be a lesson and also a thing for you to look up for. It's very important about the moral purposes like that. It's very important like you like it, socialism never works is a lie, and Vietnam still struggling, but we also still like striving toward the future like that. And then it will strengthen your belief, and it will also teach you a lot of lessons about like if how to have revolution in your society, and how to maintain it, and how to run a society like a post revolution society, because Vietnam now is a post revolution post-communist revolution society, and it's very hard. And it also a thing that like I me as a comrade born in Vietnam, living in Vietnam, we also want to spread the truth about what's actually going on right here. And I want people to look at us as we are. We are not perfect. We know that. But like the amount of lies, they are too much. But like they frame us as like robot or something that we can't even think for ourselves, and we can't even have our own mind or something like that. It's bullshit. It's all lying. And actually, it is the truth that millions and millions of Vietnamese people seriously embrace communism, socialism, and really want our country to continue to walk on this socialist path. And it's kind of hard for you to imagine that, because the amount of red scare over there is so huge, and you can't even believe that. But like, it is truth, and it works somehow. Even like Vietnam is being stormed by capitalism, imperialism for decades, even after the Vietnam War, and then we still manage to exist. That's very important. First, manage to exist in this world, and manage to like even like strive in this world is very hard. And like just look at it's like undeniable truth about what we deal with the pandemic, the COVID-19, right? Like from the start, we put human lives immediately like before every profit. We immediately shut down the flights, shut down the schools even like 3 weeks earlier than the earliest countries that got reported about shutting down the school. And nobody talks about Vietnam. No news talking about Vietnam that. And then like when in the March when we hit the second wave, when the second wave of COVID-19 hit us, we immediately stop exporting rice to make sure that like there's no food shortage in Vietnam. It's very important because Vietnam is the second country in the world that export rice the most, only after India. And rice is a very, very important income for Vietnamese economy. But we immediately shut down that rice exporting for 2 months just to make sure that our people will not be hungry. That's very different compared to other capitalist countries. They just care about profit. And also the same thing Vietnam, like now Vietnam is testing our second COVID-19 vaccine. And the price is also under the protection of the government. So it's gonna be like the most expensive it's gonna be is about $5 for a shot, less than that. And yeah, and everybody, I'm sure that everybody is gonna at least 80% of our population will have vaccine, COVID-19 vaccine. And I'm not even worried about that at all. So like I think like it's um you know Vietnam is really a nation who like that puts human life before profit. And that should be a common sense when I learned about what's going on in other countries. Like I was shocked because like what are they doing? Why they think that they are killing their own economy, they're killing their own working class, and this is gonna be good for like long-term future. But like I can't it should be what Vietnam is doing should not be a rare or unique. It should be common sense. It should be the thing that everybody should do the same thing. And I even like now I cannot wrap my head around the idea that it's so fucked up over there, even though you're so rich. America is one of the wealthiest nation in the world. And what are you doing over there? You have the vaccine right now and you failed at distributing it. So what the hell is going on?
Well, those are all very good questions, and I think your approach right now, it really reflects how politics should be, because that's where the accountability should rest. The imperialist powerhouse, the monster, the United States has built its wealth on slavery and genocide and war, and that's how it accumulated its wealth. I mean, that was what the invasion of Vietnam was all about, right? It was over 20 years supporting the colonial powers like France or directly invading Vietnam. Why? Well, to contain communism, Soviet Union, but also to ensure that Vietnam and the rest of the region would be dominated by the United States. And
Yeah.
what people still do not realize is that the United States lost, right? There's a big narrative that it was just a big mistake
They say like
and a
the US
stalemate.
didn't
Yeah,
declare war, so there's no
yeah.
war. So they did like
So it
technically did
didn't
not
lose.
lose.
Exactly, exactly. But, but, from your approach, a lot of people on the left, a lot of activists, a lot of people who claim that they are for things like healthcare here and education and democratic socialism even, when they see Vietnam and they look at Vietnam, they think immediately, and this is just dogma in a lot of instances, but there's also a racist element to this because
Yeah.
as racism has ratcheted up and really had free reign here in the United States because of the destruction of the Black liberation movement, the destruction of the indigenous liberation movement, and just the reactionary trend that's gone on here, uh, much of left-leaning people see Vietnam as uh, less than not just some kind of autocratic authoritarian society, but also not a country where humans exist. And that's where the racism part comes in, because every narrative about a country like Vietnam, about Cuba, about all the existing socialist
Yeah.
countries that exist now, it's always that humans don't really exist there because they are willing to take
Yeah.
what their governments do, what their communist parties do.
Yeah.
They're just taking it, and that's because they're brainwashed or they're this. When in effect, a lot of what they say about Vietnam actually comes back here in the United States to be, leveled on like black activists and their allies who are fighting for defunding the police or community control of the police or whatever it may be. Black people who are fighting mass incarceration.
Yeah.
They're also deemed inhuman. They're criminals. They're thugs. They're domestic
Yeah.
terrorists. They're whatever they are. And there is this deep connection that a lot of these activists and leftists don't see because they can't let go of that anti-communism, that red scare. And what's
Yeah.
unfortunate about that is we know that the political terrain in the world really relies on shifts in the United States, right? Because the United States
Exactly.
is the imperialist power, and if it, even though
You fucked
Vietnam
up
no
the
longer,
whole world.
yeah,
You fucked up the whole world. You bombed the whole world, and then what's going on in the USA is very important. It can affect the whole world.
exactly. So could you talk about I think it's really important to humanize Vietnam. And one of my strategy is not just we should always oppose war, right? We should always oppose propaganda. But we should also realize that the United States, first of all, is not the exceptionalist country, is not the beacon of democracy that it says it is. Of course, a lot of people know that now. So I don't need to explain that to all of you. But a lot of people don't know the achievements that people have built around the world outside of these colonial borders. Could you
Yes.
talk about Vietnam's achievements since its revolution? Because I don't think a lot of people know about them.
Mhm. Okay, so Vietnam got our had our communist revolution in August 1945, right? And then right after that, Ho Chi Minh became the president of Vietnam. At the time, in the north of Vietnam, they were building a socialist society, and the south were fighting mostly French at that time first. And then the first achievement of Vietnam was the Điện Biên Phủ victory. It's like the one of the greatest victory in the world that's still being like taught in like universities in Vietnam in all over the world now. It's so important. It was a proof that like even a poor, devastated colonial like Vietnam can fight against a powerful nation like France. And then right after that, we went to the war with America until 1975. You say like only the Vietnam War only started like in 1965 with the fake fabricated so like Gulf of Tonkin, but actually the war started since like 1950, since 1950 when America actually helped put like the puppet government in South Vietnam in the 50s. So like it actually started from that time. And then like the second victory was like we won against America too. Yay! Another like devastated bomb to Soviet nation now won against the like strongest military force in the world. It was the USA. And then we fought in 1979. We had like the border war with China for a few months. At that time, they were attacking the north of Vietnam to like help Pol Pot in the south. So yeah, we went against them too. And then 10 years of fighting Pol Pot until 1989, we won again. Okay, and then we were like with like terrible sanction, like embargoes and sanctions since 1979 until like 1975 until 2004, 2006. Like Vietnam still managed to deal with hundreds of thousands of unexploded bombs,
Yeah.
and then hundreds of barrels of toxins that the USA left in 1972 when they left Vietnam. They are now still vast land in Vietnam, like God, like still empty, and we can't even use those land because of the toxin there. And we are bearing hundreds of barrels of toxins down there, and we don't know how to deal with it. Maybe wait for 1,000 years for them to all like turn into water or something. And yeah, and then like in the modern time, Vietnam still managed to have a strong economy until now, and we COVID-19 is our latest victory, I guess. As a Muslim, we like usually like make fun of that, like, well, our last enemy that we defeated was COVID-19. So yes, that's the success of Vietnam. So like even like Vietnam, the southeast part of Vietnam, we're still having a lot of struggles because of like, as again, Marxism, Leninism, Ho Chi Minh taught is a science that's still being tested,
Right.
and it's very few cases that can be truly tested. So like we met so many problems that Marx, Lenin, and Ho Chi Minh could not predict, and we have to deal with them by ourselves, by our own knowledge. So it's hard. At the same time, we have heavy pressure from imperialist countries like the USA or European countries like try to push like to force us to take capitalism and to like kill our own movement, communism and socialism. Is so hard, and Vietnam still managed to survive in this world and still managed to keep following our path and still like having some achievement in the modern time. It's very important for you to understand that. Like a lot of you, when you look at Vietnam, like, oh, Vietnam is so, hey, it's so poor. It's just like people still like don't have free healthcare yet, and then blah blah blah. Like you have to understand like are we in this why are we in this position, and what is happening to us, what have been happening to us for decades, and then the pressure that we have to bear right now. And then you understand that what we achieve right now is very very important, and we tried so hard to have it. Like if we just Vietnam is like being left alone by other capitalist countries, I believe that it would shorten a lot the socialist part of Vietnam, because our official goal is by 2050 will be socialist enough to really strive toward communism. And if like we left alone and no pressure from capitalism, I think that we can reach it like in 2000 like 30 or 40 already. But that's impossible in this world. So I just beg you to learn more about Vietnam, to learn about the struggles we have been dealing with every single day. The last struggle in Vietnam was not the Vietnam War. It's not. It's happening every day in the modern society. And please understand that and appreciate what we are doing. Stop talking shit about us. Stop thinking like having so much of arrogance that you can sit comfortably in your armchair like this and think like, oh, Vietnam is so fucked up. I can do better. Like usually, like you're not smart. Like I can do better in this situation. Like, please think about it again and stop your arrogance and instead deprogram yourself from the CIA anti-communist propaganda that you're being fed every day in the Western world. Yeah, that's what I want to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it seems like one of the most successful parts of the way that the CIA and the United States, the State Department, and it's in the media, which is so tied to those organs of the state, is that it's convinced a lot of people that the only revolution, the only movement that matters is the one that exists within the United States. And we can't learn lessons from people who've actually won revolutions, who've actually have actually been victorious in defeating the same enemy, the same oppressor that we here in the United States are facing. And of course, it's different, and we're material. I'm a dialectic materialist, historical materialist, like you, Luna. So, of course, it's different, but it's the same. It's the same system. And if we can't realize that and we get caught up in the talking points of the State Department, then what are we doing? Where are we going? How can we get anywhere with that mentality? And we can't understand the intricacies of a lot of the things you were saying when you were talking about, oh, people criticizing Vietnam for not having universal health care. What was the situation in Vietnam like before
Yes,
the
yes.
revolution? Do they not
I,
understand the yeah,
I want to clarify a little bit. When I said like there's no universal healthcare, it doesn't mean like we don't have universal healthcare. Actually, we have free healthcare for poor people.
yep,
So
yep,
here's the thing: like poor people in Vietnam, we have 100 free health insurance. You go to health insurance, it is free. And then people with like near poverty line will have like the health insurance that like got like 70 to 80% discount. And like middle working class like me, we have healthcare from with discount from 50 to 80%. It depends on what kind of hospital you choose. And about rich people, who the fuck care about them? So we don't really have statistics about like healthcare for rich people. We stop at the middle working class, okay? So yeah, Vietnam is so poor. We devastated and we still like recovering from the war. But we have
exactly.
free healthcare for poor people, and we have like 50 to 80% off of middle class like me. So what's going on in your state? You don't even have a universal healthcare.
Nope.
Get it?
And there isn't, even for the poorest, even for the working class, the poorest of the working class in the United States, oftentimes there's no healthcare, right? With the healthcare reform here, some states have Medicaid that's been expanded, et cetera, but that's not every state. And that healthcare is still heavily under private control. It's still heavily influenced
God.
by insurance companies. So that's something that a lot of countries around the world don't understand, especially socialist countries. But there's also another aspect to this, is that Vietnam is in a much different context than the United States. The United States is the so-called developed world, really the imperialist world, the world that has really taken from the so-called underdeveloped world everything that it has to build this exploitative and oppressive system, while Vietnam has had to try in a hostile context. People don't even understand that after the Soviet Union fell, Vietnam lost its biggest ally. Many countries, Cuba, etc., lost its biggest ally, its biggest economic partner. And the United States didn't, as you said, didn't make it easy, kept sanctions on Vietnam for a long time. And that was the case for much of the world. And that's why we've seen this regressive movement around the world where Vietnam is hanging on with just a few other countries, maintaining a
Yeah.
socialist system in a world dominated by imperialism. So the achievement of being able to expand healthcare to which in Vietnam, it's still a lot of, poverty is still a huge thing and it's gotten a lot better. But to be able to expand these kind of services and develop the infrastructure to do that in this context is a huge achievement, especially as you said, there are landmines still going off. I think it's a much better situation now, but there's still hundreds of those landmines
Like
sitting
nearly
in the
every
ground.
month there will be a news in Vietnam about like finding a new unexploded bomb
Exactly.
somewhere like under the river or in the jungle. And even right now in Hanoi near the Ho Chi Minh Mausoleum, we just found like like 600 pounds of unexploded bomb in the wartime. Like we have to deal with it. And every year like thousands of children still being born with Agent Orange
Yes.
like birth defect. It's so bad and we have to deal with them too. And then like they all got a health insurance. Those agents are orange in Vietnam. They all have health insurance and they have like some like what did they call it, like some allowance every month from the government, even though like we ourselves like it came from our own national budget because the USA didn't even do a damn thing to have Vietnam to deal with that, and then it's fine. And then actually, a few years earlier, Vietnam sue America in international court about
Mhm.
Agent Orange using Agent Orange, and then we won. But like I checked, and there was no news about the winning of Vietnam against the USA in international court, and then no, most of you didn't even care. And then like yeah, it's sad when like it's like Vietnam, we don't really hope that the USA can do anything to help us. We just wanted the whole world to know what they did to us to understand what's going on right here, and then we try to deal with it ourselves. We don't really like Vietnamese. We will not forget our history, and but we also forgiving people. We don't hate America. We don't hate all Americans right now. Like, this is bullshit. EJ told me when he first came to Vietnam in 2012, something like that, and at first he thought like Vietnam's going to be very hostile against him. Actually, we were so welcoming. Like
Mm.
even until now, the kids saw him on the street and they still like wave their hand, try to get his attention, and say hello in the street. It's very cute, and it's like the same thing. And like, yeah, we are very welcoming people. And then like the worst thing you might face here, and you come to Vietnam, is like people will stare at you because you're Westerner and you look different.
Americans are weird looking, so that's another thing.
So yeah, that's it. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I think there's so much. I mean, we could talk about, and we're not going to be on forever, but we can spend some time going through some of these intricacies about this topic. Um, you know, I think the mentality, right? It might surprise people what you're describing, because to think about the atrocities that the United States alone committed. We're not even talking about just the United States, but the French and the imperialist Japanese. There's so many atrocities that had happened in Vietnam over the course of the 20th century. But just the United States, the millions of people that were killed, the rapings, the pillaging, you said the Agent Orange. That was no small thing. That infected a large percentage of all agriculture, water, accessible water, etc. Infected a lot of people in the United States. A lot of former soldiers, and the diaspora still go through this. I believe that my family was affected by it as well,
Wow.
and so it's not proven, but I believe so. So um, when you think about just those kind of atrocities that happen, and then the mentality being so different, the idea that it's not even necessarily forgiveness, but it's an understanding that the only real relations that a socialist country can have with the world is one of peace and one of cooperation. And so you're not gonna be hostile to the aggressors just because they're the aggressors. You want to have peaceful relations too, and that's the
Exactly.
position. So,
Yeah.
could you explain more about Vietnam's relationships with the world? There's a lot of, and then maybe part two of the question is a lot of the criticisms of Vietnam by the most militant of leftists is that it's capitalist now, right? So, could you talk about the relations that Vietnam has with the world in the context of that criticism? Like, could you speak to maybe the international perspective of Vietnam, the internationalist perspective, and then how that may reflect and debunk that criticism of, oh, Vietnam is just capitalist now, so why should we defend it?
I see. Okay. So here's the thing. Vietnam, the official foreign affairs policy of Vietnam is trying to be friend with every countries in the world, and we try to stay like neutral. So like we trade with like America, European countries, China, or something like that. Bad. It is a fact. And it's not like really written a lot in English, but we actually send it like made like traded guns with like Middle East country to like get a lot, and then like we also have like guerrilla training a lot of South American countries too. And we also just like we made like military uniform and stuff for Venezuela. So like Vietnam is like trying to trade as much as possible, trying to remain like normal relationship. We don't want to like stop working with any country or something. Like we don't want to like that. We want to be friends desperately. Friend with as many as well as possible, because like we want to build our country. We build our like like negotiation position in the world right now. It's very
Mhm.
important to us. And yeah, Vietnam is very internationalist, and I do believe that because like the specific like history that we had to deal with, I understand why Vietnam tried to stay neutral in a situation like the protests in the USA, even though we know that the protest is like kind of leftist movement, but we don't dare to openly support it. because it's very sensitive problem. And then the United States is still up there and watching everything like a hawk with their hawk eyes. So
Mhm.
who dare to like openly support that? So that's why like actually we have a lot of Vietnamese comrades like me support those movement. But like I understand the situation why Vietnam doesn't dare to do that, and I hope you do understand too. Vietnam's still very poor, very weak country. Our voice still not strong yet, and we are trying to strengthen that voice every day. And about like Vietnam is capitalist, Vietnam is the traitor of communism. Please stop that bullshit. Because like I don't know where and from who you got your definition of socialism, but in our framework, according to our Marxism, Leninism, and Ho Chi Minh thought, socialism is the transitional period from capitalism to communism. It is the direction, it's not an end goal. Okay, so of course in our socialist path there will be capitalism and communism and socialism all coexist in this society. And like that is the reason why, as I said earlier, there is capitalism in both Vietnam and the USA. But I call Vietnam is socialist and I don't call the USA is socialist because our direction is moving toward communism in the future. Meanwhile, in the USA, you try to maintain it, you try to make it more stronger. So that is more to us about the direction that we are choosing to go than the actual is like what is existing right now. And I hope you to understand that. So like I don't know where and who you get the definition. Like most people say like your country is not socialist until the last workers of your nation own their means of production. Like
Mm.
where did you got it? Like I don't know where, but like because we follow Marxism and Ho Chi Minh thought, and it is a path, not an end goal. And even like by if we say like to by 2050 will be socialist enough. Okay, like on that path will be socialist enough to truly strive towards social communism. I hope that it will be true. I truly hope that, even though in this hostile world. But yeah, that's what I say. Like, please stop that bullshit about Vietnam is capitalist and we are traitor of communism and we should not support Vietnam. Meanwhile, Vietnam still the rare example for the world for you to look at, like how to run a post-revolution society, how to face with difficulties and hardship and like and hatred from capitalist nations.
Yeah, I mean, look at the movement, in the United States. The strongest movement in the United States right now. Some people may think it's like for Medicare for all or universal health care, or Bernie Sanders AOC, but really the most the movement we saw explode here in the U.S. during the summer was the movement for Black Lives against police brutality. And I don't think there's any better example than Vietnam in showing what it means to win against racism, what it means to win against the system that racism is ultimately uh, created for. It's ultimate the reason why racism exists is to justify imperialism, is to ensure that capitalism, as you said, is maintained. That's what racism does, and it does it in a very material way. It's not just it's hateful ideas. Vietnam was not just fighting hateful ideas when U.S. soldiers were going over there, calling them gooks and slaughtering them in the millions, but they're also fighting that military albatross that was coming into the country and attempting to install a puppet dictatorship across the country so
Yeah,
that the peasantry and the vast majority of Vietnamese people would remain in virtual feudal conditions. And that's what people don't realize is that all of the things that Vietnam has achieved, or any socialist country, and every socialist country has taken their own path, some more similar than others. But as you said, I think the overarching framework is if you're in this transitional period, then you have to understand, then it's all about what the particular context of that country is that uh, really defines what socialist development will be. And
exactly. Based on
also
the material conditions and
exactly,
human.
exactly. I mean, look at, let's say, like, for comparison, Cuba and Vietnam, because they're kind of similar development wise. Cuba um has been under sanctions since the revolution, since 60, 61. And
For
it
for
never
50
has
years,
Cuba been
right?
able
Or
to break
50
free
years.
from that. While Vietnam has had the opportunity to say, okay, we can now trade with the world and develop in a different path. We can integrate capitalist mechanisms into the country, maintain a socialist base, and develop to
Mm,
a more prosperous socialist society. Because I've heard you say this in your videos, you can't have socialism with poverty. Socialism is not about universalizing poverty, it's about getting to the state of communism, which means everyone has the
exactly.
wealth. Everyone
Yeah,
has the ability to live free from want, right? That is the
exactly.
ultimate
I'm
end
so
goal.
sorry for Max because like that misunderstanding came from one sentence of Max in one of his book. He said like it's socialism like they like no, they like redistributing poverty, so poverty will like disappear. And they those asshole capitalists they took like one part of his sentence. They're like, oh, so this means that his poverty already must be put like you're so. This was so mad. Like means that like you redistributing poverty, so there's gonna be no poverty. So that's it. Like just like took like 80% of Jeff Bezos' personal money, and then there's no poverty in the USA, in the world, no
Mhm,
more hunger.
mhm.
So that's what Marx meant.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah, I
continue.
know. No, it's so true. And for Cuba, let's say, now Cuba is also going through its own path of how do we integrate the world market now, because especially since 2014 when the United States became a little more friendly, that was rolled back under Trump a bit. But uh, I don't think there is any question in the world socialist movement, what is left of it, that in this moment, what is primary is to ensure that in the modern era, that poverty is not the defining feature of society, because you cannot sustain a revolution in poverty. Regardless, I mean, Cuba has amazing achievements, and Vietnam has been a part of
Yes,
that. I mean, but it's not just about having healthcare and a house, right? And what if that house is falling down? I went to Cuba and people were telling me it's really frustrating to not be able to fix up this home right here because we can't get the supply because the United States is sanctioning us.
mm,
We can't get the concrete. We can't get, ships have to go like around the world to dock in Cuba. It's a ridiculous thing. It's ridiculous. So it's almost virtually impossible to get some things, and that's why Cuba has had a hard time maintaining infrastructure, while Vietnam has said, no, we're going to take this opportunity now to develop the country, or we risk really placing the revolution in danger, because socialism is really all about uh, getting to the next stage. It's not about staying in place and protecting what you have. And I think these are the kind of issues that American leftists, Westerners in general, have a hard time discussing, because what they think about Vietnam is and other socialist countries is that they are traitors to socialism if you're a real militant, dogmatic Marxist, or if you're on the other side, you think that Vietnam is full of brainwashed people who are being controlled by the Communist Party and they have no freedom. And but the last thing I want to say, you can comment on this, is I feel like countries like Vietnam, they put economic freedom first, right? That's what's most important. Corporations don't control the government. The government controls corporations. That's how it should work in a socialist society. And yeah, so if you
oh
could give maybe some
no, no
examples
free
of that.
market.
Oh
Oh
no!
no, what
Oh
free market?
Oh, no. Could you give some examples of that, though? Because I think it's important for people to understand what that means, so they can maybe build some real empathy towards what that can
Yeah,
bring. What does it mean for a government to control
yeah.
the
Uh,
capitalist
yeah.
mechanisms?
Okay. I think the best example is about the COVID-19 vaccine. I just like two few weeks ago, I read an article written by a doctor in Vietnam. He talked about why shouldn't we put the vaccine in free market. He said it why we should not do that. And then he explained like because the free market will just raise the price because it's the like competition and profit, and who can afford it will get the vaccine. Meanwhile, COVID-19 is a very dangerous virus, and it will mutate. Like the more people got infected, it will be easier for the virus to mutate. So that's why we need at least 80% of our population to have the vaccine. So that is better for our economy. That's why the Vietnamese government should put it under the protection of the government, and it should not be free on the free market. But in long term, it's gonna be harmful to our own economy system, because like we need to put humans life first, and then we can protect and we can have a strong economy. And that is the one of the strongest example of how like we should not let the free market control, let the like businessmen capitalists control the society, the economy, because like it's not good for the common good of our people. And then lucky that Vietnam like will not put our domestic vaccine in the hands of capitalists. We will like give them under the protection of a government.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look how it's working here. We see, look at the vaccine distribution. It is a nightmare because there is no public health system here. People can't talk about what's happening in Vietnam. Standards of living, life expectancy has increased vastly in Vietnam. What is it doing here in the United States? It's stagnating or it's declining, depending on which year you're talking about. And this is the United States where it's still 24, 23, whatever percent of the entire world economy. Yeah, people's life expectancy is
Yeah.
stagnating or declining. What does that say? That says that corporations control everything, because when corporations control everything, uh, what comes first? It's always about the profits, and not profits for people, because profits aren't necessarily a bad word. When profits are distributed uh, towards things that help people, profits are good. But when profits are all about private accumulation, capitalist accumulation, that's what we have here in the United States. That's why we have stagnating or declining life expectancy. That's why we can't even. Something just happened here in the United States. I don't know if you followed it on Twitter at all, but there was this online campaign for forcing a vote for universal health care here during House proceedings for the Speaker of the House. That the Democrats are the slight majority, and they were supposed to nominate Pelosi or whoever. And some folks wanted a protest vote, a protest for a vote for universal health care. Now, no one in Congress, no one in the House said a peep for healthcare during a pandemic, right? And so anyone who wants to say, "Oh, well, Vietnam is under the control of a communist dictatorship," well, it's time for people to investigate and study what does that mean. And also, let's not act like dictatorships are just quote unquote communist. Capitalism is a dictatorship. It's a dictatorship of Bezos, of
Exactly.
Buffett, of Gates, of major multinational corporations, of Goldman Sachs, of Morgan. These forces that control 50, 60, 70, 80% of all wealth.
Okay.
Uh,
You say it's oligarchy. It is oligarchy. It's not democracy.
exactly. Exactly. So, uh, we'll probably say let's give this another 15, 20 minutes, and um, I think what would be a good thing to transition to is, um, the future, Vietnam's future, coming up post pandemic. Who knows how the world will get out of this pandemic? But you know, what do you see as Vietnam's role? And maybe integrate this with your work, because I think that there is a lot of work to do, and one of the things that's going to be so important is more people in the United States seeing internationalism as a duty and as a real task of the movement. So, in the coming years, what is Vietnam's role in all of this in terms of leading a path forward for humanity? Like, what do you see? What's the conversation there about that? Because I know that's what a lot of the world is talking about, even if not a lot of the governments are, right? What's next?
Yeah, I think that based on what I read about our plan in the future from government, the short-term plan is to have everybody in Vietnam have COVID-19 vaccine. And then by that time, hopefully we will kind of open our borders to other countries so we can continue trading with other people. And then like Vietnam will also only when we make sure that every citizens of Vietnam get the COVID-19 vaccine, we will like exporting and will export the vaccine to other countries to help them too, and with really cheap price. And then I think that Vietnam, for now, Vietnam is an example of how to deal with the pandemic in the future. Everybody should do at least what Vietnam is doing. Even like because it's proven even a poor country like Vietnam can do it means that it doesn't cost that much. It's not that expensive to do it. Even if Vietnam can do it, so you can do it. The problem is like, will you be like ready to sacrifice like a few months profit to shut down your country to save people's life to contain the virus, and then you can reopen it? That's the big question here. The Vietnam shows to the world that you can do it. We can do it, so you can do it. The second is Vietnam wants to help other countries of the world with our own domestic vaccine with really cheap price. And another thing is like look at in the actually look at the good point of the shitty situation right now. Is it a proof that a even like a not like enough socialist country still can do a better job than the wealthy capitalist nation in the
Yeah.
world? It means that socialism works
Yep.
somehow. Even a shitty socialist country like Vietnam still can do it better than the wealthy 100-year-old capitalist nation like the US. And then uh, Vietnam, I believe it is also a chance for Vietnam to be stronger,
Right.
to have a stronger economy in the world right now, because like we can manage to exist and then to like flourish, flowers during this situation. Yeah, and then it's mostly Vietnam is an example for the world about how to deal with the pandemic. We also like strengthen the position of Vietnam in the world to show that socialism works and it's not that bad, and it actually put human lives before the profit. And then we also eat like urge to have the world too. We don't just like want to take advantage of this situation, because like just like in the last year in March or April, we also like made our COVID-19 test kit, right? And we sold it to the world very cheaply, like one-fourth of the price, and then gonna help other countries too. So yeah.
Yeah, and one thing I would add is Vietnam shows that the U.S. and the Western way of life is not the only one that can bring progress to the world, because there was a time, and of course I'm a historical materialist, and there's dialectics. So there's capitalism is full of atrocities, but capitalism has also raised the scientific level and all of that, which Marx talked about.
Exactly.
But we're in a different period now, and they could not have predicted, although I think Marx and Lenin and all of them, they did predict that about they did talk about crises, they did talk about imperialism and what would happen in the future, but they couldn't predict that the United States would be leading the way towards what is, I think, the decline of the economic mode of production of capitalism and imperialism and its political apparatus, which at times both of them are framed equally as superior to all else. Anything else that exists in the world has no comparison to bourgeois democracy, electoral democracy, representative whatever, republicanism, whatever people call it. This Western democratic model has shown itself to be fraudulent, to be
Yeah.
incapable, not able to address the pressing needs of humanity, while Vietnam did it so rapidly, so cleanly, so methodically in addressing this pandemic. I think it's a shock to a lot of people, right? I challenge a lot of folks who are watching, and anyone who may watch this, just go on Google or wherever your search engine is, and just look at the numbers, right? And just think about how how drastic it is for Vietnam to have less, I think less than 50 deaths, 35, something like that.
35 deaths and about
35.
1,400 cases,
I
and
mean,
more than a
Vietnam
half
is
came from outside of Vietnam.
in Vietnam, exactly. Vietnam's about a third, a fourth of the size of the United States, right? 90, 98
Up
million
to
people.
97, yeah.
Well, the United States has about 1% of its population that's died of coronavirus, right? So 350, 60. It's gonna be half a million by the
Yeah.
time the winter season possibly is over. So you're looking at a catastrophe and an economic one too, because as you said, it's about you want capitalism to work. You can't have a pandemic raging because you're constantly
Mhm,
having to, think about profits and what's going to happen to businesses, shut
mhm,
down, not shut down, all of this. It's led to this depression here, and Vietnam
mhm.
isn't going through a depression. So
Nope.
internationalism, I think, is so important. It's not just about defending people, and I think some people get this way and it becomes saviorism. It's not just about weaker people, weaker nations being destroyed, and that's why we have to stop it, right? It's not just about the demonization. It's also that our humanity is bound together. We can't even think about having the successes that Vietnam has had, or Cuba, or China, or even the DPRK. No one wants to talk about that, but DPRK really didn't have any coronavirus issue either. You can't think about having that kind of success if you really think that your model of governance and your economic model is
Mm,
better than theirs. You can't, because you're already approaching this issue from a perspective of, oh well, screw that 2 billion, 3, whatever it is, number of people who has a different economic model and somehow has figured this out, but we'll just keep, I guess, walking along this treacherous capitalist path and hope it works out for us. That's kind of the conclusion you get when your knee-jerk reaction is to demonize socialist countries. And I think,
mm,
I was so happy to open up with you because I think you're really at the forefront at debunking, demystifying these horrific myths about Vietnam, and also the erasure. And maybe we can close on that. Not a lot of
mhm.
people know where Vietnam's located on a map in the United States, and not a lot of people know anything about Vietnam. Really, nothing.
Mm.
Um, when people hear Vietnam, they're like, Vietnam War? That's it.
We
That's
have a
that's
tiger bomb. We have a tiger bomb. I guess you know about that. It's just
exactly.
so
So
funny. Yeah, I remember like when EJ told me a story like when he was like teenager or something like that. First time he saw a tiger bomb because like he got a bruise really badly when like a motorbike accident or something, and then some of his friends introduced him to like the tiger bomb, and then he bought it and he saw like made in Vietnam. Like, whoa, holy shit! So Vietnam really existed, right? It's a communist. Is it illegal for having communist products here in the USA?
wow, and that's shocking, especially now where
Like he's
Vietnam is a
living
real
in Vietnam now.
I know. Wow, yeah. Yeah, so, anyway, do you have any closing thought? Like, what would you, for those, this is the internationalist transmission, so, um, you know, do you have any parting words to those of us who are trying to figure out how to build an anti-imperialist movement here? Based on what you've learned, what you know about here, and what also you've imparted from just growing up in your homeland, a country that is trying to build socialism in the very first stages of doing it, and has successfully defeated imperialism.
Yeah, the thing that I want to talk to you like the most is like we don't I'm not I am not asking you to like praise Vietnam or look at Vietnam as like God or something. That no, we have many problems, and what I beg you to do is look at what it actually is. And whenever you read any news about Vietnam from like BBC, Reuters, VOA, foreign policy, please don't buy into it like first. Like please like stop and think about it for a moment. And if you can, go Google it to see like the other side of the stories if you can. And then please don't believe it immediately because there's so much lies in there. And it's gonna, the way they frame the words, the way they choose the word, it's like it's all just negative about Vietnam. And I beg you to not believe them at first, and then try to look for more aspect of it, and like dialectical materialism, by as many try to find as many evidence about it as possible, and then do not assume everything before you read anything about Vietnam. And then also maybe you watch the channels like me, Luna and Danny too. It will offer you a really a fresh viewpoint about the problems that you've been hearing so much on the Western media outlets. And then like, yeah, and then back you to look at us like comprehensively about what we achieved, what we are facing with, and then like, yep, so have hope in communism and learn about history, learn like read Marxism, Leninism, Ho Chi Minh if you can. And please do not like read like the Black Book of Communism or something like that. It's not a good source about Marxism. Please try to, if you're really concerned, you have a question about Marx, Lenin, Ho Chi Minh, try to find their real thought, their real works, and then to approach them in like a sincere way. And actually I am having a project right now where I am translating the Marxism textbook that Vietnam have been using to teach all of our students all over the country. So we rewrote Marx, Engels, Lenin, and Ho Chi Minh into like one big textbook, and it's very good, and it's very clear, and it teaches you the basic about Marxism, Leninism, and it's very interesting. And it is an official textbook of Vietnam. So yeah, I would finish it maybe within this month. So, and it will be free on ebook. So yeah, hope that
In-
you will welcome my work on that.
Incredible, incredible. So yeah, I mean, um, I know you've done a lot of work on Ho Chi Minh, and I can say that Ho Chi Minh was one of the first Marxists that I read, out of my own study in political development. So he's really easy to read. So go find his works; they're all online, not too difficult to find. But follow Luna Oi. She's on Twitter. She's on YouTube. Follow her channel, and you can get a lot of at least the initial resources you need to understand
Mm.
Vietnam better. And of course, follow this channel, follow the Left Lens, like and share and subscribe, do all the things necessary to keep yourself tuned in. I'm sure we'll be welcoming Luna again. Um,
Mm.
and contribute, donate to Black Agenda Report if you can, because we're all donor driven. Donate to my Patreon, because we're all living on donations from our supporters. So do that in the description. And I think this was a really good conversation. There's so much we could get into, because I
Yeah.
mean, we're talking about a society that's developing socialism, that has been at the forefront. And I think I just want to close with this, that Vietnam Vietnam is really, uh, um, its liberation movement was so influential on the United States that you could argue that the only time the United States ever had an anti-war movement was because of Vietnam's liberation movement,
Mm.
because of what the Vietnamese people were doing. So we have a debt. We really have we owe a debt of gratitude to the Vietnamese people, and we really have a lot of work to do to glean the lessons necessary from what Vietnam is doing now, from its difficult struggles, as you said, post 1975, pre 1975, a nation of people that have heroically, in the tens of millions, stood up and said no to imperialist aggression, that imperialism would not be the future of
Mm.
Vietnam. And there's so many lessons that we can learn from that. And so this program is all about bringing on folks like Luna and others who can directly speak to this phenomenon, and then directly speak to why internationalism, this idea that the only way we can really defeat the oppression and exploitation of this world global capitalist system is by linking forces with people all over the world, And that falls right here in the United States and in the Western world, that debt of responsibility right now, because just look at how the world is divided and look at what the United States is doing with all of its hegemony. It is taking the world into an abyss, a path to total destruction in a lot of ways, with its saber rattling with Russia and China, nuclear weapons, all of that, climate change, all of this. These are existential crises produced by US imperialism, produced by the system that we're fighting here. So it's so important that we listen to people like Luna Oy and others who are doing this work. So thank you so much, Luna, for joining us today. It was really good. So follow her, and we will be back soon with the Internationalist
Yeah,
Transmission. Thank you so much
yeah,
for coming.
yeah. Thank you so much for like letting me here and have a chance to talk to your audience. I'm very happy, and then I like to know. I'm very happy to know that there are like socialist people out there trying to look at the truth, something like that. I just want you to look at the truth. I don't want you like to fed you another kind of propaganda. We're so tired of it. Just look at what is actually happening right here, and you understand how socialism works, and it might change your mind one day, maybe. But thank you for having me here.
Yeah, of course, of course. If there's anything that hopefully this conversation will do, is to get you all looking further and deeper into everything we've talked about and all the things we weren't able to get to. So, much solidarity, comrade. It was great to speak with you, and I'm sure we'll be back again.
Bye bye.
Bye, everyone.